It's the spring of 2000 and Ricky Hendrick, the son of Rick Hendrick, is at an open Busch Series test at Darlington. Hendrick Motorsports arranged for Jeff Gordon to attend the test to help the young Ricky navigate the difficult 1.3-mile track. It also helps that Ricky would be entering this race in the number 24 JG Motorsports car, a ride he's been splitting with Jeff Gordon in the season of 2000. While they're standing on the hauler, Gordon's probably saying something along the lines of, "You want to run this line entering the corner, start braking at this marker, get back in the gas here." While Jeff is explaining how to make the most speed, out of the corner of his eye he sees the number 92 car flying through the corner, catching the three-time Winston Cup Series champion's attention. "Everything I've been saying, just like that guy just did, that's exactly the way you want to do it." Gordon pressed Ricky and asked him who drove that car. Ricky said, "Oh, that's my buddy Jimmie Johnson, and this is his first time at Darlington." That stuck with Gordon, and after Ricky had made his first run, Gordon went to the garage to chat with him, and Johnson's team was conveniently parked a few stalls down. He went over there and introduced himself, wanting to get the answers straight from the source, remaining skeptical that Johnson had never been to Darlington before. Fast forward to that summer in race 23 of the 2000 Busch Series season at Michigan. Gordon was running just his fourth race of the season for his previously mentioned team, JG Motorsports, running a part-time schedule that he was sharing driving duties with the aforementioned Ricky Hendrick. Jimmie went up to Jeff during the mandatory pre-race drivers meeting after stalking him out and making sure he'd be there, asking him for some career advice. Conveniently, Hendrick Motorsports was also searching for a driver to expand to its fourth Winston Cup team, and while Johnson was a long shot, the conversation ended with the two drivers exchanging phone numbers, with Gordon advising the young Californian not to commit to anything before they spoke to each other again. Shortly after he restarted on lap 80 while running just outside the top 5, Johnson, who had been behind Gordon most of the day, passed him on the inside, it stuck, and he drove away from the 24. It got Gordon's attention after he realized he was going to be beaten by him. Gordon finished in 7th position that day, one spot behind Jimmie Johnson. After the race, Jeff went to his boss and told the elder Rick Hendrick that they needed to decide this week if they were going to expand that Cup program, and that he found the driver for it. Rick Hendrick said who? And Gordon said Jimmie Johnson. Just over a month later, on September 22nd, Hendrick Motorsports announced its newest driver and that Jeff Gordon would be the co-owner of the car along with Rick Hendrick. The driver, well, a guy who had never even finished inside of the top 5 in a Busch Series race, would take the wheel full-time in 2002. Jimmie Johnson, who DNQ'd at the season-opening Daytona Busch Series race, would finish 10th in points that season with 6 top 10 finishes. Nothing that screams a Hendrick Motorsports ride, but he improved in the 2001 season, increasing that total to 9 top 10s and 4 top 5s. But more importantly, he went to victory lane in the 19th race of the season at Chicagoland, taking the lead from a young Ryan Newman, with 43 laps to go and never looking back. In Johnson's first visit to Daytona in the Winston Cup Series, what would be his 4th career start, he won the pole. At the time, he became the youngest pole winner of the Daytona 500 in history, and this was his first pole in a NASCAR-sanctioned event. This had quickly bought Johnson some time for some of the pundits who thought Johnson was being rushed into a top ride in the Winston Cup Series. Johnson, though, would not be able to convert the pole to a victory as he was battling just outside the top 10 with 29 laps to go when he blew a tire and hit Jeff Green before spinning into the infield. He would finish in 15th position, 1 lap down. In the 3rd race of the season at Las Vegas, Johnson led the first laps of his Cup Series career, 6 of them, and earned his first top 10 finish, a 6th place. The following weekend at Atlanta, he earned the first top 5 of his career, a 3rd place, and what would be a streak of 5 top 10s in the first 7 races of the season, putting the rookie 3rd in Winston Cup points. Anyone who was concerned about this kid performing were quickly put to silence. Race 9 at Talladega saw Johnson win his 2nd career pole, and he fared a bit better in this one than at Daytona, actually leading laps, 8 of them, and coming home in the top 10 in a 7th place finish. A great momentum builder before heading to his hometown track for the first time, California Speedway. Rolling off from the 4th starting position, Johnson was a front runner all day, leading 4 different times for 62 laps. Johnson took the lead from Bill Elliott after a late race restart. He was then stalked by veteran Ricky Rudd, and then by second-year driver Kurt Busch, who himself had just won his first career race a few weekends earlier at Bristol. But ultimately, it would be the 48 car, winning for the first time just 13 races into his Winston Cup Series career and 10 races into his rookie season at his home track. For reference, it took his co-owner and mentor Jeff Gordon 42 tries before winning his first race at the 1994 Coca-Cola 600. Speaking of the Coca-Cola 600, just 2 races later, Johnson would win the pole once again, going 2 for 2 in qualifying at NASCAR's Crown Jewel events. Johnson would dominate this one, leading a race-high 263 of 400 laps before imploding during the final pit stops from a caution he himself caused while in the lead. Johnson was trying to lap Hut Strickland, making contact with his rear bumper and spinning him out after the 23 car had clipped the apron. On pit road, Johnson had overshot his pit box, the illustrious first pit box thanks to his pole position, and had to reverse, losing a bunch of time in 8 positions, coming out in 9th place. However, due to old restart rules, lap cars would line up on the inside with the lead lap cars on the outside, so his 9th position was more like 18th position, 9th on the outside row. Johnson would run out of time, only clawing his way back up to 7th position in a race won by Mark Martin. So the first big mistake of Jimmie Johnson's career when he had a chance to win. So what would the 48 team do? Well, they'd go out and win the next week. Another dominant week, leading 188 of 400 laps at Dover, Johnson would move past teammate Jeff Gordon and into 2nd place in points. 13 races into his rookie season, he had 2 wins, 3 poles, and 9 top 10s. Johnson was here and he was going to be a weekly threat. Johnson would not hit a summer slump in his rookie season, only finishing outside of the top 15 twice over the next 15 races, which include his 4th pole position at the 2nd Richmond race, and as we return to the fall race at Dover, Johnson would once again unleash a dominating performance, leading 155 of the final 160 laps for 170 on the day to sweep the Dover races in 2002 in his rookie season, winning his 3rd race of the year. So here we were, 8 races remaining in the 2002 season, and we had a rookie 2nd in points, just 30 back of Mark Martin, who had recently taken over the points lead from 45-year-old Sterling Marlin, who had held the points lead for 25 races from race 2 at Rockingham all the way till race 27 at New Hampshire. I know this is a Jimmie Johnson video, but let's just relish in that for a second. Sterling Marlin, who ran his first NASCAR Winston Cup Series race in 1976, was leading the points in the 2000s. Unfortunately for Marlin, who finished 3rd in points in 2001, fractured a vertebrae in his neck the next weekend in an accident at Kansas and would fail to finish the season. A young Jamie McMurray would make his debut the following race at Talladega before winning in his 2nd start at Charlotte, then known as Lowe's Motor Speedway. But let's go back to Kansas for a second, because with a 10th place finish, Jimmie Johnson would leave the race as the points leader, 7 races away from the impossible, a rookie, winning the Winston Cup. Jamie McMurray making his debut at Talladega wasn't the only notable thing to happen that weekend. Jimmie Johnson won his 5th pole of the season, but the universe had other plans. 2nd in points Mark Martin, starting on the outside of the front row, had his wheel lock up while warming up his tires, causing him to drive directly into the pole sitter during the pace laps, damaging Johnson's right front fender. Before the race even started, the top 2 in the championship had already collided. After some unsuccessful lobbying by both Chad Knaus and Rick Hendrick to let the 48 car come down pit road to repair the issue, the green flag flew, causing the 48 to come down pit road under green to fix the fender at Talladega, a track where he needed to stay in the draft. It's all good though, right? I mean, it's Talladega, there will be a big wreck or an engine failure or something that brings out the caution, the 48 will race and get his lap back, and everything will be cool, right? Well, wrong. With the implementation of stage cautions prior to the 2017 NASCAR Cup Series season, this race will forever hold the distinction of being the final NASCAR Cup Series race to run without a caution. Ultimately though, this wouldn't even matter, as with 12 laps to go while running in 36, 4 laps down, Johnson blew an engine and would finish 37th. Mark Martin, who was black flagged by NASCAR before the green flag to check the hood to make sure everything was okay, also never got a chance to get his lap back, finishing 30th 2 laps down. With the top 2 in points running into trouble, it was 2001 championship runner-up, who finished runner-up at Talladega, Tony Stewart, who jumped into the points lead. Johnson would finish 6th in the following 2 races at Charlotte and Martinsville, staying within striking distance of Tony Stewart with 4 races remaining, but poor runs at both Atlanta and Rockingham sealed his fate, and at the end of the season, Johnson would end up 5th in points, just 7 back of his boss, Jeff Gordon. Tony Stewart would hold on to the lead for the final 6 races of 2002, winning his first championship after starting the season dead last in 43rd position in the race and in points after blowing an engine just 2 laps into the season opening Daytona 500. I would be remiss not to mention the fun anecdote that Jimmie Johnson did not win the Rookie of the Year award despite finishing one position and 7 points ahead of fellow rookie Ryan Newman. Rookies used to have their own scoring system with the driver's best 17 finishes counting towards the Rookie of the Year standings. While Johnson and Newman were pretty equal in terms of top 10s, Johnson with 21 compared to Newman's 22, Newman had a staggering 14 top 5s, which was just second in the series to champion Tony Stewart's 15, compared to just 6 for Jimmie Johnson. And if you thought this was a wild start to the season and a career, this was just the beginning. I don't want to skip too much of this stuff, but this video would probably be 2 hours long if I went into depth into every season of Jimmie Johnson's career, so forgive me while I fast forward through some of the appetizers here and get into our main course. Johnson boasted another 3-win season in his sophomore year, but this time increased his top 5s from 6 to 14, the exact amount Ryan Newman used to beat him for Rookie of the Year. Johnson would make a real late season charge for the championship, finishing either second or third for all of the final 6 races of the season, but it would be too little too late as Matt Kenseth cruised, in 7th place, to his first NASCAR Cup Series championship, despite only winning once the 3rd race of the season. Now, this point has been argued. Some people claim the implementation of the chase was the Matt Kenseth rule, while others say internally NASCAR and the TV partners had been discussing a change to make the final races of the championship more exciting for years. Regardless, for the 2004 season, NASCAR was going to change its points format and championship format for the first time since the 1970s. With 10 races remaining in the season, the top 10 in points would be reset and separated by just 5 points each, ranging from 50-50 to 50-05. All I'm going to say is if the face of the sport, Jeff Gordon, laughs in your face when you propose this idea to him thinking it's a joke, you should maybe back off of it. If it was possible for a third-year driver to break out after winning a total of 6 races and finishing top 5 in points in both of the seasons, it was Jimmie Johnson. Johnson led the series with 4 wins heading into the 2004 chase for the NASCAR Cup, and after leading the points for a majority of the regular season, was narrowly beaten by none other than Jeff Gordon to start the chase as the 2nd seed after 4 finishes of 36th or worse in the final 6 races leading up to the chase. Johnson had a 232-point lead on Gordon following the 20th race of the season, the 2nd Pocono race, which he won to sweep the 2 races at the track that season. Johnson had also won the 400-mile race at Darlington, the same track he was initially noticed by Jeff Gordon at, before correcting the universe from his disappointing loss in his regular season at the Coke 600 by leading 334 laps from the pole, destroying the field. Jimmie and the 48 team started the chase with an 11th place run at New Hampshire and then a 10th place run at Dover. However, bad luck would strike the 48 team and he would DNF the next 2 races in a row. With just 6 races remaining in the season, Johnson was 9th in points, 247 back of championship leader Kurt Busch. So, he cut his losses and just moved his focus on to 2005, right? Well, wrong. Johnson would win the next 3 races in a row at Charlotte, Martinsville, and Atlanta. However, his win at Martinsville would be an emotional one, as on the way to the racetrack, a Hendrick Motorsports plane crash carrying 10 family and team members crashed, killing all on board. Ricky Hendrick was one of them. This left the whole Hendrick Motorsports organization racing with heavy hearts through the remainder of the 2004 chase, especially considering both Jimmie Johnson and Jeff Gordon had a chance to win the championship, recovering almost 200 points to only be 59 back of Kurt Busch with 3 races remaining. Johnson would finish 6th at Phoenix, add 1 more win for good measure, his first Southern 500, another crown jewel, and then finish 2nd at the season finale at Homestead, losing the championship to Kurt Busch by just 8 points to close out a crazy 6-race stretch to end the season. Johnson got on the board early, winning just 3 races into the 2005 season at Las Vegas, which was part of a 7-race top 10 streak to start the season, giving the 48 team the points lead early on. At the Coca-Cola 600, Johnson stole the lead in a thriller on the final lap from 2000 champion Bobby Labonte to win his 2nd consecutive Coke 600. In hindsight, though, I think most people wouldn't mind if this finish was flipped. Labonte, who went winless in 2004, would go the final 363 races of his career without winning, the equivalent of over 10 full-time seasons. The 21-time winner would never even equal the second place run again, as he moved from Joe Gibbs Racing to mid-pack Penny Enterprises for 2006 before running for some back markers in Hall of Fame racing and eventually JTG Daughtery Racing into the early 2010s. Anyways, this is a Jimmie Johnson video, not a Bobby Labonte video, but that was a tough loss for Bobby. Johnson would enter the 2005 chase fourth in points and would win twice in the 10-race shootout, Dover and Charlotte, two tracks he had won at multiple times before, and would lead the chase at the halfway point following the fifth race. He would finish third at Martinsville, 16th at Atlanta, 5th at Texas, and 7th at Phoenix, entering the championship finale second in points, 52 behind championship leader Tony Stewart, the guy who had bested him in 2002. Stewart had won 5 times in the regular season, all in a 7-race span, but went winless in the 2005 chase. At Homestead, while running 28th fighting to stay on the lead lap with leader Jeff Gordon right on his tail, Johnson blew a tire and smoked the wall, ending his chances at winning the title. He would drop to 5th in points by the end of the race, his 4th top 5 points finish in his 4th season. After the heartbreaking low to end the 2005 season, Johnson and the 48 team looked to start 2006 with a bang. Johnson started Speed Week strong, finishing top 5 in both the Budweiser Shootout and his Gatorade Duel. In stock car racing's biggest race, Johnson would be in the catbird seat leading heading into the green-white checkered, a 2-lap shootout in the Daytona 500. Despite a late race charge by the Dodges of Ryan Newman and Casey Mears, Jimmie held on and would have the ultimate high to start the season, winning the Daytona 500. After a week of running around and doing media interviews and all the commitments that come with winning the Great American Race, Johnson finished runner-up at Fontana to Matt Kenseth, the driver who beat him for the 2003 championship. The next week at Las Vegas, he would once again win the 3rd race of the season, leading only 1 lap after taking the lead in the final corner of the race from who other than Matt Kenseth. 3 races into the season, and the 48 car had already won twice. Race 9 at Talladega, the track that ended his championship hopes in his rookie season back in 2002, Johnson would take the lead on the final lap, passing his teammate Brian Vickers, the 2003 Busch Series champion, who was still searching for his first NASCAR Cup Series victory. I wonder if Johnson and Vickers will ever battle for a victory at Talladega again. After winning the Daytona 500 this season on top of his 2 Coca-Cola 600s and his 1 Southern 500 victory in 2004, Johnson only had 1 crown jewel left to win, the Brickyard 400. At Indianapolis, the 48 car would roll off from 5th position, but he wouldn't lead the race until well after the halfway point, leading for the first time on lap 117 after taking the lead from Matt Kenseth. After a caution with 17 laps to go, the 48 car would give up the lead coming out of the pits in 4th and restarted in 8th after a few cars stayed out. Johnson would have a wicked restart, jumping up 4 positions in the first lap, and then track down race leaders Kyle Busch and Dale Earnhardt Jr. to take the lead with 10 laps to go. Johnson would become just the 3rd driver to win all of the Daytona 500, Coke 600, Southern 500, and Brickyard 400, joining Dale Earnhardt and his teammate Jeff Gordon. Despite leading the points for 22 of 26 races in the regular season, Johnson would enter the 2006 chase second in points to Matt Kenseth. Johnson would struggle out of the gate, failing to finish inside of the top 10 for the first 4 races of the chase. 90 laps into race 1 at New Hampshire, Johnson got collected on a restart while running in the 30s after lifting the hood with suspected engine issues. He would finish 39th. The next weekend at Dover, the 48 car would have a pretty average day considering Dover was one of his best tracks, finishing in 13th. Race 3 at Kansas, Johnson had led a race-high 105 laps and was leading with 5 laps to go when he ran out of gas, relinquishing the lead to Tony Stewart. Johnson would finish in 14th. Race 4 of the chase would see the series return to Talladega, and Johnson took the white flag in 2nd place behind Dale Earnhardt Jr., and he was in a great position with his teammate Brian Vickers on his rear bumper. So this would be easy, right? Johnson would make his move, his teammate, who wasn't in the chase, would push him to victory, and Hendrick Motorsports would celebrate a 1-2 finish, right? It was all coming together. Johnson laid back off of turn 2 and started building up a big run. 25 was right on his bumper. But what would happen next would turn Brian Vickers into public enemy number 1. As Johnson made his move on race leader Dale Earnhardt Jr., who was also in the chase, the 25 would hook Johnson, collecting Jr., causing them both to spin into the back straightaway grass. Brian Vickers would win his first career race, and Johnson would wind up in 24th after being in position to win 2 weeks in a row. He would end up 8th in points, 156 back of leaders Jeff Burton and Matt Kenseth. Jimmie would turn it around, finishing runner-up the next weekend to Kasey Kahne at Charlotte, leading 72 laps. He would finish one spot better in race 6 at Martinsville, leading almost half of the 500 laps, 245 of them, clawing himself back into the championship conversation, now third in points, just 41 back of Matt Kenseth. Moving to Atlanta, Johnson would once again finish in second place, this time leading 27 laps, moving up another spot in points, now second to the 17 car. 3 races to go, Texas, another second place. With this run, he took the points lead over from Kenseth. 2 races to go, Phoenix, another second place. After 5 races in a row finishing either first or second, Johnson had clawed back from his 156-point deficit and was now entering the season finale with a 63-point lead over the 2003 champion. Johnson, just needing to have a decent day, would finish 9th en route to his first NASCAR Cup Series championship in only his 5th full-time season. Johnson was in a pretty unique position heading into 2007, defending his championship. NASCAR would run 2 different styles of car during the season. For 16 races, they would run the new car of tomorrow, while the Generation 4 car that was used in 2006 would be run for 20 races. Why does this matter? Well, the cars would require much different setups due to different springs, suspension settings, all that stuff, and of course the very different aerodynamics, thanks to that cool looking wing on the back of the COT. With that in mind, what type of championship hangover did the 48 team have? Well, they put up the first 10-win season since 1998, which was none other than Jeff Gordon. For the 3rd consecutive season, Jimmie would win the 3rd race on the schedule, once again held at Las Vegas, and would follow that up winning the next weekend at Atlanta. 2 wins through 4 races. At Martinsville, the 6th race of the season and just the 2nd race in the new car of tomorrow, Johnson had an epic battle with teammate Jeff Gordon, winning for the 3rd time through 6 races. And he just never slowed down. Johnson would add his 4th win of the season at Richmond, putting him 2nd in points after 10 races, but a tough summer stretch through races 14 through 20 dropped him down to 9th in points. Johnson would right the ship though, finishing top 5 in the next 3 races at Pocono, Watkins Glen, and Michigan, before winning the final 2 races of the regular season, his 2nd at his home track at Fontana, and then sweeping the Richmond races. This would put Johnson at 6 wins through the 26 race regular season, and he would enter the chase as the points leader despite being 4th in points, over 400 behind Jeff Gordon, thanks to the new seeding that reset all the 12 chasers to 5,000 points, and then gave them 10 points per bonus win, putting Johnson at 50-60. Johnson would leave race 1 of the chase at New Hampshire tied for the points lead with Jeff Gordon after a 6th place run, before dropping to 3rd after finishing 14th from the pole in Dover. He would narrowly retake the points lead from Jeff Gordon after a 3rd place finish at Kansas, and then finish runner-up at Talladega to none other than Jeff Gordon after Gordon made a last lap pass on him. Johnson finished 14th at Charlotte after spinning with just over 100 laps to go, and was 68 points back of race winner Jeff Gordon at the halfway mark in the 2007 chase. Gordon had won 2 in a row, so what did Johnson do? Well, he doubled that, racking off 4 straight in 2 different types of car. Martinsville in the COT, win. Atlanta in the Gen 4, win. Texas in the Gen 4, win. Phoenix in the COT, win. Gordon, who had finished top 10 in all 4 of those races and had a worse finish of 11th throughout the chase, was put in a position where Johnson just needed to run all the laps at Homestead to win his 2nd championship. Johnson would cruise to a 7th place finish, becoming the first driver since, guess who? Jeff Gordon, to win back-to-back Cup Series titles, to be the last driver to win under the Nextel Cup moniker. So 2006 was a full season of the Gen 4, 2007 was a combination of the Gen 4 and the COT, and 2008 would be a full season of the COT, so 3 years, 3 different car setups. Johnson and the 48 team would lose the advantage they had in the Gen 4, and I mean, how could you follow up a 10-win championship season, right? Johnson started the season off with back-to-back poles, his 2nd at the Daytona 500, but wouldn't win the 3rd race of the season at Las Vegas this year. His first win of the season would come in race 8 at Phoenix, one of the tracks he won on in the COT in 2007. He would win whatever we want to clarify the 2008 Brickyard 400 as, giving him 2 wins through 20 races, which is somewhat slow for the 48 car standards. For the 2nd year in a row, Johnson would win the final 2 races of the regular season, Fontana and Richmond, and would finish the regular season 3rd in points. With his 4 wins, he would reset at 5,040 points, third just 10 behind leader Kyle Busch, ex-teammate who had moved to Joe Gibbs Racing this season. In the 10 chase races, Johnson would have a worse finish of 15th and only finish outside of the top 10 twice. He sat on the pole in half of the chase races, 5 of 10. He finished second at New Hampshire, fifth at Dover, and then a win from the pole at Kansas. He survived Talladega, getting a 9th place finish. His streak of 3 poles in a row started at Charlotte, where he would finish in 6th, and at the halfway point of the chase, he was leading with a 69-point lead. Nice. A win at Martinsville, then a second at Atlanta, and then his first and only slip-up of the chase, a 15th place at Texas, but he was still over 100 points clear of Carl Edwards. He won once more at Phoenix, sweeping the races there in 2008, all but locking up the championship. Edwards was the only driver mathematically with a chance at passing Jimmie Johnson, 141 points back. Jimmie would cruise to a 15th place finish, becoming the first driver to win 3 championships in a row since Cale Yarborough in the 1970s. He had finally done something that his co-owner Jeff Gordon couldn't even accomplish. What's crazy is the 48 7 wins that season didn't even lead the series. In fact, it wasn't even runner-up. Carl Edwards had won 9 races, including 3 of the last 4, and by all accounts had a dominant chase. A third, another third, a second, 29th after being collected in a crash at Talladega, 33rd at Charlotte after battery issues, a third, a first, a fourth, and another first. And how about Kyle Busch, who led the points almost all season, and his 8 victories, all of which came in the first 22 races of the season, before his colossal collapse in the chase, ending the season 10th in points. Unlike some seasons where Johnson was the one snake-bitten, this was the first title that could be argued he stole from other drivers. Moving on to 2009, this golden horseshoe has to fall out eventually, right? Well, 3 wins in the regular season, including his second Brickyard 400, and entering the chase 3rd in points. He would end up 2nd after the points reset, 10 points behind the leader, 50-year-old Mark Martin? What? So here we are, a 50-year-old man whooping everyone's butt, winning 4 races in the regular season. First was at Phoenix, then one of the hardest races on the schedule, the Southern 500, a field mileage win at Michigan, and then at Chicagoland as well. Didn't he retire after 2006? Well, yes, but no. Mark Martin's idea of retirement was running just 24 of 36 races in 2007 and 2008, and he was still very competitive despite having to learn the new car of tomorrow. 9 top 5s and 22 top 10s showed he still had the competitive edge, and when Rick Hendrick asks you to run one of his cars full time, you say yes. In the first race of the chase at New Hampshire, Jimmie Johnson finished 4th, but he was not the points leader after Mark Martin won his 5th race of the season. And then Jimmie Johnson won 3 of the next 4 races, Dover, Fontana, and Charlotte. Once again, we were halfway through the chase and the 48 car was almost untouchable. Did you think him only finishing outside of the top 10 twice in 2008 was impressive? Well, he did one better than that this year with only 1 finish worse than 9th. That came at Texas after a runner-up finish at Martinsville and then a 6th at Talladega, but even with the poor finish, he was still 73 points on Mark Martin with just 2 races remaining. He added 1 more win at Phoenix, his 7th on the season, because why not, before wrapping up his 4th straight title with a 5th place run at Homestead. This was the first time in NASCAR history that a driver won 4 straight championships. This was something that not even Richard Petty could do, getting his run of 4 titles in the 1970s split by Benny Parsons, one of the men in the booth for Jimmie Johnson's first championship in 2006. Unfortunately, that would be the final race old BP would call, as he would pass away less than 2 months later after a battle with lung cancer. It was a new decade, and NASCAR would once again make changes to the rule package, dropping the rear wing for a more common spoiler 5 races into the 2010 season. I wonder how the 48 team felt about that after winning 3 of the first 5 races in 2010, including what would be the final race using the rear wing at Bristol. In the summer, Jimmie Johnson would go back-to-back, winning the one and only race of his career on a road course at Sonoma, thanks to Marcus Ambrose, and also at New Hampshire. But Johnson was a bit further back, tied for 5th in points with Tony Stewart. When the points reset, he moved up to 2nd, just 10 points behind Denny Hamlin, thanks to his 5 wins. Johnson started the 2010 chase on the back burner after qualifying and finishing 25th at New Hampshire, the same place he won at just a few weeks earlier. That would be the final time he finished outside of the top 10 that season. A win at Dover, a second at Kansas, back-to-back thirds at Fontana and Charlotte, and here we were again, halfway through the chase, and Jimmie Johnson was the points leader, 41 up on Denny Hamlin. However, Hamlin would claw back, winning 2 of the next 3 races, Martinsville and Texas, for his season-leading 7th and 8th victories on the season. Denny was 33 points and 2 races away from his first championship and being the one to break Jimmie Johnson's streak. At Phoenix, Hamlin, who led a race-high 190 laps, was on the bad end of a strategy call and had to give up second position to pit for fuel with just 14 laps to go. He would wind up finishing 12th, tying his worst finish of the chase, with Johnson coming home inside the top 5 in 5th. Quick napkin math, but instead of going into Homestead with a 48-point lead, he was just 15 points up on Johnson for the championship finale. Hamlin's weekend got off to a disastrous start, qualifying 37th, and then he spun himself out on lap 25, trying to make his way through the field, damaging his splitter after making contact with Greg Biffle. He was never really a factor all day and finished 14th, his new worst finish of the chase, and one of only 3 races he didn't finish inside of the top 10. Johnson finished second and would grab his 5th title by 39 points. Without the pit error at Phoenix or the spin at Homestead, the positions were there for Denny Hamlin, but it's Jimmie Johnson and we've already talked about his golden horseshoe. It is pretty crazy though, 15 years later now in 2025, Hamlin having 56 Cup wins and being 11 on the all-time win table. This is the closest he got to winning that elusive championship. But back to Johnson, he has now won 5 championships in a row. Winning just 5 races is considered a decent career in NASCAR. Winning 5 championships is something that only 2 other drivers have done in history, and Johnson did it all in a row. There were a couple different changes going into the 2011 season, the first of those being another change to the car as the front splitter was removed for a more polished looking nose, a preview of what would eventually come with the Gen 6, but we'll talk about that a little later. It would also see the second major points change in Jimmie Johnson's career, as the old system of a maximum of 190 points per race, with each position being worth 5 points plus some bonus points, was swapped for a new format where one position was worth 1 point, plus a 1-point bonus for leading a lap or the most laps. NASCAR must have started to be really worried that no one else was ever going to win a championship again. And it looked like the wheels were starting to finally fall off. Johnson only managed 1 win in the 26-race regular season, at the time tying the closest finish in NASCAR history in that brief period of the tandem drafting style at Daytona and Talladega, thanks to how squared up the noses and bumpers were, if it was possible to consider just 1 win the wheels falling off. Jimmie was actually leading the points heading into the regular season finale, but with a 31st place finish at Richmond, it dropped him to 2nd behind Kyle Busch. He would be reset to 5th in points, 9 points back of leader Kevin Harvick. Johnson started the chase with a top 10 finish at Chicagoland, a pretty midday at New Hampshire finishing 18th, and then a 2nd at Dover after leading a race high 157 laps, followed a win in race 4 at Kansas. Were we really doing this again? Enter Tony Stewart, the most recent champion not named Jimmie Johnson, after he held him off in Jimmie's late season charge in 2005. Tony kind of snuck into the chase 10th in points after a winless regular season, but one thing to be mentioned here, he no longer drove the car he won his 2 championships in. He had bailed from Toyota and teamed up with Gene Haas to form Stewart-Haas Racing in 2009. A risky move jumping from a perennial title contender to a team that had never finished higher than 29th in owners' points, but it was paying off. Stewart actually led the points for most of the 2009 season and had a 180-point lead on Jeff Gordon entering the 2009 chase. In fact, Jimmie Johnson, who won the championship that year, was almost 300 points behind Tony Stewart before the reset. Tony didn't have a poor chase in 2009 by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he won his 4th race of the season in the 3rd race at Kansas, but he would finish outside of the top 20 in 3 of the final 4 races after positioning himself inside the top 5 in points. Anyways, back to 2011, the winless in the regular season Tony Stewart would win the first 2 races of the chase, but after a 25th place run at Dover and a 15th place run at Kansas, where Jimmie Johnson won, Stewart would drop to 7th in points, relinquishing the lead to another guy we've already talked about, Carl Edwards. Did you think Carl's 2008 chase with only 2 finishes worse than 4th was impressive? Well, he won up to that in 2011, only finishing outside the top 10 once. His worst finish, an 11th place at Talladega. Johnson had wrecked 2 weeks in a row at Charlotte and Talladega, and it looked like 6 in a row was off the table, as he was over a full race of points back, 50, with just 4 races left in the chase. Carl Edwards held a 19-point lead on 4th place Tony Stewart. Edwards' final 4 finishes were 9th and then 3 straight 2nd place finishes. So he finally won that championship that Johnson beat him to in 2008, right? I mean, the only way he could lose is if some way, somehow, someone beat him in all 4 of those races. Tony Stewart's final 4 races, a 3rd and 3 wins. In fact, the 2 drivers would actually tie in points. Stewart would win the tiebreaker, though, due to his 5 wins, all in the 10-race chase, to Edwards' lone win in race 3 of the season at Las Vegas. So at the end of it all, we had a Tony Stewart breaded sandwich on both ends of Jimmie Johnson's epic 5-in-a-row streak. And while the streak is now over, there's still a few more seasons I wanted to touch on. The next year in 2012, Johnson won 3 races in the regular season and was 4th in points at the time of the chase reset, where he'd reset to 2nd to start the 10-race dash for the championship. His first 3 finishes of the chase, back-to-back 2nds and a 4th. But if you thought he was the points leader, you were wrong. Cue Brad Keselowski in just his 3rd full-time season, his 2nd in Team Penske's flagship Blue Deuce, who started the chase with 2 wins at Chicagoland and Dover and a 6th place finish at New Hampshire. The 2 drivers would have pretty even finishes over the next 3 races, and with 4 races left in the chase, Keselowski was up on Johnson by just 7 points. For the 2nd year in a row, it looked like Johnson could be beat, and then Jimmie won 2 in a row from the pole at Martinsville in Texas, flipping his -7 to a +7. That golden horseshoe that we were talking about earlier, though, would be briefly misplaced as back-to-back finishes in the 30s dropped him to 3rd in points, giving the young Keselowski his maiden title. Something that makes Keselowski's championship run even more impressive is the fact it was a lame duck season for Dodge and Team Penske. In a terrible turn of events, this would end up being the last season that Dodge would ever compete in NASCAR, going out on top, winning the championship. A new car, the Generation 6. It was going to reset the field, they said. Teams who struggled in the COT, they'd get a reset, they'd be equal with everyone. Teams with an advantage in the Gen 5 COT, they would lose it. And then Jimmie Johnson won the first race of the new car, his 2nd Daytona 500. He would win again in race 6 at Martinsville, and then add 2 more wins at Pocono, before going back and grabbing 1 more at Daytona, leading the points for 23 of 26 races in the regular season. However, at the chase reset, Johnson would drop to 2nd in points behind Matt Kenseth, the guy who had beaten him 10 years earlier. Kenseth had just jumped from the drowning fishing boat of Roush Fenway Racing onto the mega yacht of Joe Gibbs Racing and was having a career season, winning 5 times in the regular season, besting Johnson's 4. Kenseth would sweep the first 2 races of the chase, Chicagoland and New Hampshire, but would only be up 18 points on Johnson thanks to back-to-back top 5s by the 48. Jimmie would win the 3rd race at Dover, then finish 6th at Kansas, a 4th at Charlotte, and then had his worst race of the chase, a 13th at Talladega. Kenseth, who finished 20th in this Talladega race, would lose the points lead for the first time in the chase, giving Johnson control with just 4 races remaining. But we saw it last year, Jimmie in control with a few races left, but losing it to a youngster in Keselowski. The veteran Matt Kenseth could give him the same fight. Johnson would put up top 5 finishes in the next 3 races, a 5th at Dover, his 6th win of the season at Texas, and then a 3rd at Phoenix. Kenseth matched him well at Dover and Texas, finishing 2nd and 4th respectively, but a 20th place run would all but seal it for Johnson, as it would put the 48 up 28 points heading into the season finale at Homestead. Kenseth had a strong car finishing 2nd, but his only chance was if Johnson finished in the 30s, and Jimmie Johnson finished in 9th, just like in 2006, winning his 6th championship, now just 1 behind the legends of Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. Alright, so remember that epic battle with Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards? They were just 3 points apart entering Homestead, resulting in Tony Stewart having to win the race that Carl Edwards finished second at. Well, some say this is one of the main factors behind NASCAR drastically changing their chase, or what's now known as the playoff format. The other reason, well, maybe that Johnson won 6 of 10 championships ran in the original format. Nonetheless, the championship was going to become a lot more luck-based as the chase field would be expanded from 12 to 16 drivers. There would be eliminations every 3 races, dropping from 16 drivers to 12, and then from 12 to 8, and finally from 8 to 4 in a one-race winner-takes-all format, akin to the Stewart and Edwards deal from a few years earlier. Johnson's 2014 and 2015 seasons in this format were by no stretch of the imagination poor seasons. I mean, he won 9 races in the 2 seasons, but had a poor round of 12 in 2014 eliminating him, and a disappointing first round exit in 2015 after a disastrous 41st place finish at Dover. In both seasons, he would win the round of 8 playoff race at Texas, which would have punched his ticket into the season finale at Homestead, but he was already eliminated both times. Statistically, 2016 was one of the worst seasons of his career. For the first time in his 15-year Cup Series career, Johnson finished with less than 20 top 10s, with only 16. What a chump, just under 50%. His 11 top 5s tied his second worst season in 2014, and was only worse than his rookie season in 2002, where he only grabbed 6 of them. But in the new win and you're in system, Johnson punched his ticket early, winning the second race of the season at Atlanta. He would once again win at home in Fontana, and again had 2 wins through the first 5 races of the season. He wouldn't win again in the regular season though, and was 9th in points at the time of the reset to start the chase. His round of 16 was pretty respectable, a 12th in the chase opener at Chicagoland, an 8th place at New Hampshire, and then a 7th place run at Dover, despite the fact he led over 200 laps in the opening round. The round of 12, though, started with a bang as he won Charlotte to punch his ticket into the round of 8, which was great for 2 reasons. One, the obvious, he was advanced to the next round and could focus all their efforts on developing those cars, and number 2, he was now stress-free entering the one wildcard race of the chase, Talladega. The round of 8 started at Martinsville 1 week after that Talladega race, where he would again win the opening race of the round, and this time locked himself into Homestead. Johnson was now looking at a chance at history to tie Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt to become the 3rd 7-time champion. Texas and Phoenix were both pretty disappointing, not finishing inside of the top 10, but it didn't matter. He was going to be one of 4 drivers racing for a championship. His first competitor would be defending champion Kyle Busch, who, like Johnson did in 2007, looked to win back-to-back championships, this time for Joe Gibbs Racing. His second competitor would be an old friend, Carl Edwards, still looking for his first championship after the close calls of 2008 and 2011. And his third competitor, his first time making the championship 4, was Joey Logano, who won last weekend at Phoenix to punch his ticket into Homestead. Logano was having a mid-career resurgence after switching from Joe Gibbs Racing to Team Penske, the same organization that Keselowski beat him in 2012. If you watch this race, it was pretty clear that the 48 car was outmatched and was the weakest of the 4-car championship group. Edwards and Logano had swapped the lead a few times earlier in the race, but with about 30 laps to go, it looked like Busch would be the guy to steal it from Edwards. After an epic battle on the track with about 25 laps to go, Carl Edwards passed Kyle Busch and began driving off into the sunset. That was until 16 laps to go when NASCAR threw the caution for Dylan Lupton, who had a flat tire and was safely driving on the apron to pit road. This is a caution that has been debated time and time again, and honestly this whole race could be the topic of its own video, but we're just going to keep moving along here. At the time of the caution, Johnson was the only one of the championship 4 not inside the top 5, running last of the 4 drivers in 6th position. In fact, on track, he was 10 seconds behind the 19 car, sliding and almost junking it trying to find some speed. Everyone would pit, but the big winner would be Joey Logano, jumping up to 3rd behind non-chaser Kyle Larson and Carl Edwards. Kyle Busch fell to 6th position after a poor stop. Non-chaser Kevin Harvick split these guys up in 4th, with Jimmie Johnson restarting in 5th, 3rd on the inside lane. Kyle Larson took the top lane for the restart, which put Carl Edwards on the inside, and Joey Logano lined up behind him. Late restart with 10 to go, the 22 went for it, the 19 blocked, and Edwards wrecked hard. Suddenly, the championship was wide open. Kyle Busch would restart in 3rd, with Jimmie Johnson 1 spot behind him in 4th. Joey Logano would restart down in 8th position after pitting to fix front nose damage he took in the Carl Edwards wreck. They restarted again with just 5 laps to go, but they couldn't even make it a lap as there was another caution. The 22 had a monster restart though, passing Busch and battling Harvick for 3rd, while Johnson settled into 2nd. 4 reasons I'll never understand. Despite only running 1 green flag lap on the tires and having 16 cars on the lead lap, Kyle Busch came back down pit road from 5th position, and with just 3 laps to go, he came out in 13th, ending his chances at the championship. So we had a green-white checkered 2 laps to decide the championship. Johnson got a good jump and passed Larson, the dominant car all day, putting a 2-car buffer between himself and Logano. Busch would only manage to claw back to 6th, and Johnson, despite only leading after this final restart, would win number 7. 15 seasons, 7 championships, 3 points formats, the 48 was one of the best to ever do it. Johnson was just a diamond under pressure. He almost never had poor finishes in his chase runs, and his bad days were when he finished 11th or 14th, compared to most guys who would have 1 or 2 races in the 30s, which was just too deep of a hole to climb out of, especially when the 48 car could, and usually would, finish in the top 5 every single week. Even in the multiple round format introduced deep into his career after he'd already won 6 titles, he could win when he needed to. Johnson would follow up his 2016 championship by winning 3 of the first 13 races of 2017, before taking a vicious hit the following race at Pocono. Some contribute this crash to ending his reign of terror, as his Dover win just 1 week earlier would be the 83rd and final time he would visit victory lane.